great sacrifices, and here we are again. And now we will hear testimony to the other sacrifices, to the new sacrifices, to the current sacrifices of many of you and your families. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Dr. Michaels.
Thank you very much. On behalf of Secretary of Energy Bill Richardson and the Clinton-Gore administration, I'd like to welcome you to this hearing. We're all very grateful that you've come. We are faced with a very important task, and we appreciate your assistance in doing this. I'd like to spend a minute and give some background as to why we're here, and then we'll go into the meeting. Secretary Richardson, in the last year, has been focused on an agenda to turn around the Department of Energy, to end the policies of denial, of not affirming or not recognizing that we may have made people sick in the production, in the testing, and the cleanup of nuclear weapons. The Secretary has said, if we've made people sick, we should help them rather than fight them. And he's asked me to reach out to our community and hear from individuals who believe we have made them sick and begin to help with working with them construct a policy that can address that. And we've made great progress. In July of 1999, President Clinton signed a memorandum calling upon the entire administration to look at this question, to answer several questions. First, are we making people sick in our nuclear weapons complex because of exposure to radiation or toxic chemicals? And if we are making people sick, are they being adequately covered by state workers' compensation programs? We're gathering information to answer those questions because the third part of the President's memo was, if we are making people sick and they're not being adequately compensated, what should we do? And we have a large process involving many of the government departments working on this, and we've had public meetings, and this is actually the eighth in the series. And let me tell you, everyone has been very similar in that we've always planned for a few hundred people, and we always get far more than we even imagined we could come, because this is such an important issue. The information that we gather today will go into the information that we give to the White House. You're obviously giving it directly to your representatives in Congress, two of whom will be here listening to you today. And we hope through this process we'll come up with a program that will be able to be based in science, to look at individuals who are heroes, who've helped us win the Cold War, who spent their lives testing, producing, designing, manufacturing, and eventually cleaning up after nuclear weapons. If we've made them sick, we have to determine if we have, we need to help them. We have to stop fighting them. And this is very useful in our process in doing this. We're very, very pleased today to have two members of Congress here with us, and I'll turn the meeting over to them in just a moment. But let me go through a little housekeeping first, and how we're going to do this meeting. We have a huge crowd of people who want to speak. We'll limit speak to 4 minutes. No one can speak for more than 4 minutes. You have to be very brief. I have a very complex instrument. We have the finest instrument makers, testers in this room, and when this rings after 4 minutes, your egg is done. And we'd like to, it really is very important. Thanks. It really is very important that people not speak for too long, because we have a lot of people who want to speak. Everybody's statement is being transcribed. We have a court reporter here in the front. Her name is Charlotte Macias. I'd like to thank her. If everyone can join me in thanking her. She will have a very difficult job. She probably has never heard the names of some of the chemicals you'll be talking about today. Or maybe she has, but speak slowly for when you get something really complicated for her to get this down. And we're grateful for that. In addition, a number of my staff are here. You've met some of them. Jeff Egan, well, they're outside all helping. Kate Kempen, Regina Griego. If you feel you can't speak publicly or if you don't want to even stay long enough, because this is going to go for a long time, you can speak with them individually. We also have an 800 number you can call us, and there's a flyer outside. You've all taken the number. For the press, there's a press packet available. Deborah Martinez in the front row from Congressman Udall's office has extra copies, and you can speak with her. This meeting has been a really unique collaboration. We haven't done anything like this. The very hardworking staffs of Congressman Udall and Senator Bingaman have worked with community organizations, labor groups, workers, their families, activists to put this together and to build this meeting. I'm grateful to all of you. Let me thank Ken Silver, Huguette Surgeon, Rick Blay, the people who have worked hard to put this meeting together, and of course the staffs of the members of Congress. The way we'll do this meeting is I'll be the moderator, and I can only stay until about 2:30, and I have to get back to Washington tonight. Jeff Judge, who's the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Environment, Safety, and Health, he's my number 2 person. He works for me. He will stay, and I'll turn the meeting over to him about 2:30, and he'll continue this. We're giving him a break for the moment. And again, let me thank you for coming. Let me then turn over briefly to our 2 speakers here, Senator Jeff Bingaman, Congressman Tom Udall. We're very, very pleased they could come and be here today. I'm very honored that they came.
Buenos días, bienvenidos. Muchísimas gracias for spending some time with us today, your precious Saturday time, and coming here and sharing with us, I know, things that are going to be very personal. We're here today, as Dr. Michael has said, to address the issue of workers at the nation's nuclear weapons complexes, and specifically the health and safety problems. And DOE and its predecessors do not have a good record at dealing with these issues. And for many years, they've ignored these problems. They've denied there were problems. I would say decades of denials, because it's gone on so long. And when workers have come forward in the past, there have been those that have stood up and said there's no problem. They've covered up the problem. And even individuals have been fired as a result of raising issues. And when they have filed lawsuits, there have been no resources have been spared in order to fight those lawsuits. So this is not a good history. Thankfully, Secretary Richardson, Assistant Secretary Michael, the DOE leadership, has decided to turn over a new leaf. They've decided to initiate studies, coordinating with the White House as to what the issues are. These studies have come out very recently. The final report is going to be out at the end of this month, and they show that there are significant health problems at these nuclear establishments all across the country. They show excess cancers, they show beryllium disease, they show asbestosis, and they show diseases that are attributable to chemicals in the workplace. So I want to applaud Secretary Richardson and Assistant Secretary Michael for turning over this new leaf. And I want to just tell you, I was here yesterday in Espanola, and we met with some of the workers, and I think it really goes, one worker raised with me the heart of what I think the issue is here today. He said this started all in the 1940s, and there have been so many lies and cover-ups and all of this going on. He said, how can we trust the government? How can we trust the government after all of this has gone on and we're way down the line here? And the only answer to that question that I had was it's very, very difficult, I think, under these circumstances. But one thing that we can do today in terms of listening to your stories and taking them back to Washington, and one way we can build back that trust is to put in place a system that will provide medical care, will provide compensation to take care of the workers and their families that so bravely have been part of this national security effort on the part of this country. So we're here today Senator Bingaman and I as part of a process to help fashion that remedy and put it in place. And then just as a final note, I want to say that we do not want any retaliation as a result of this hearing, as a result of testimony here today. And I was very happy to hear Dr. Michael weigh in on behalf of the Department of Energy and say he was going to do everything he could if people were retaliated against to make sure that those were punished. The head of the National Laboratories has also weighed in on that. So with those assurances, I think we also, all of us here, should emphasize that we want people to talk truthfully and we want them to know that they are not going to be retaliated against. Thank you very much for coming once again. It's a pleasure to be here.
Let me also thank everyone for coming and say I'm very glad to be here myself to learn what I can about this very important issue. I'm persuaded also that the Department of Energy, in spite of many years of denial about some of the health effects of work that has gone on at some of our national security facilities, the Department of Energy is now looking to turn over a new leaf, to get to the facts as best they can, and to compensate where that's appropriate. This is all, as we know, part of the legacy of the Cold War. I mean, none of this was happening in the Espanola Valley back before the Cold War began in the 1940s. But as a result of the Cold War, we've got a lot of backfilling to do, a lot of correcting to do, and we've begun that process. We have begun it, unfortunately. First, we began it with a commitment of very substantial sums in Washington to clean up the environment around our nuclear weapons complex, and we are spending something in the range of $5 billion to accomplish that. We have not, unfortunately, come to grips with the other problem, which is not the damage to the physical environment, but damage to the people who are working in those facilities, and we need to come to grips with that. I've tried to start that process in a couple of ways. As many of you know, I introduced a bill which has also been sponsored by Congressman Udall in the House, but it's a bill to compensate people. It's called the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act, to compensate people who worked in uranium mines and mills and who were injured as a result of that and as a result of the exposure to radiation there. That bill is passed through the Senate. We are hoping to get final action on that bill before this Congress concludes. The other bill that I've introduced is one that is the Energy Employees Compensation Act, Senate Bill 1954, dealing with the problem of those who were exposed to beryllium here in New Mexico and across the country. The two facilities that are most affected by that legislation would be the two sites are Paducah, Kentucky, and Oak Ridge, Tennessee, where there was specifically, we know of exposure to radioactive contaminants there in connection with working with beryllium. But I think one of the main purposes of today's hearing is to find out how that bill needs to be expanded. What are the other exposures that people can demonstrate or can show have caused injury, and we need to try to deal with as well. I think it's also important that we try to learn what we can from many of you today who are going to testify about your experience with the current workers' compensation system as it would apply here in New Mexico. New Mexico workers, our workers' compensation system here has a very low level of coverage for lost wages as compared to the rest of the nation. DOE has ordered contractors in the past to fight attempts by current and former employees to apply for state workers' compensation programs for past exposure to radiation and chemical hazards. DOE's traditional approach, in my view, was a mistake, and I know that Dr. Michaels here and Secretary Richardson would like to change that, and I hope the information that they'll get today will help them to change that. So again, I thank you all for being here. I hope we can learn things today that we can use in adding to this legislation. I believe this is a major step forward, and I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you.
Great. A couple of final points. One is this is a public meeting. We're pleased everyone came. We understand that some people are hesitant to be seen in a public meeting. We have the press here, obviously, and we welcome the press. We have an area, a media-free zone in the corner here with seats. If anybody wants to ensure that they're not on camera, they're welcome to go sit over there. We've asked the media not to focus their cameras over there. If anyone here would prefer to testify in Spanish rather than English, we're very pleased. We have a translator, interpreter who has joined us, Arturo Sandoval from Voces Incorporated, and he will be here. And if anyone, please, when you come up, please ask for his support. Some very welcome guests from Senator Pete Domenici's office, Troy Benavides. Sir, thank you for coming to join us today. We have a number of elected representatives and political leaders and tribal leaders. Jeanette Wallace, I know, is here. She's here. Thank you for coming. And if there are other political leaders or tribal leaders here, please stand up. I'd like to welcome you. Well, I guess, Jeanette, thank you for coming. And we have also a number of labor leaders over here, and Rick Blay and Mike Shea, Victor Lovato. Various people came. Again, thank you all for coming and helping us build this meeting. With that, the way we'll do this is I will read the name of the first speaker and then the speaker after that. So the second speaker knows to prepare. We'd ask them to come up to get ready, and they will speak. They will get ready. They'll speak after the first one. I will turn on the egg timer when you begin speaking, and when you hear the bell ring, please try and wrap up as quickly as you can. Thank you very much. The first speaker will be Bill Van Buskirk, followed by Jean Barrington. Please come up here and speak. Thank you all. No, sit here.
Greetings to the distinguished guests and our hosts and the interested parties. In late 1943, I was working for Lockheed Aircraft in Burbank, California, building jigs and tooling for military aircraft, the number one priority for the war effort. Management at LASL interviewed me and asked me to come and work for the project as a prototype machinist. Someone in Washington, D.C. felt this important enough to arrange for a work release from Lockheed. Employed by the University of California December 6, 43 through July 7, 79, age 19 through almost 55. At date, medical disability became effective. In mid-1940s, I was required to machine beryllium without any safeguards. I was not told that this procedure posed any health risk to myself or others around me. In late 40s, the lab began changing procedures for machining beryllium, and at some point in time, began an annual health check as a follow-up to my exposure to beryllium dust, taking my weight, lung volume, and chest x-rays. Still not told the gravity of my exposure or what the consequences of it might be. July 70, University of California health doctors said that they saw a change in my x-rays, referred me to Dr. Mary Mawson, pulmonary specialist with Loveless Medical Clinic, Albuquerque. July 28, 70, Dr. Mawson gave me the results of comprehensive pulmonary function and blood gas studies she had ordered. There is probably a diffuse fibrotic process in both lungs, certainly compatible with my exposure to beryllium. She recommended an open lung biopsy and a chemical assay of the tissue for a definitive diagnosis. Lab health doctor doctors and their consultant, Dr. Harry Hardy of Massachusetts General Hospital, were not in favor of doing biopsy. Dr. Mostyn then told me that borreliosis is an insidious, latent, progressive, debilitating, life-threatening industrial disease that is treatable but not curable. Finally, I had been told what I might expect from my exposure, and I agreed to the biopsy being done. January 22nd, 71, biopsy performed, Loveless Hospital, tissue sent, Dr. Claude Sill, Idaho Falls, for chemical assay. Definitive diagnosis, borreliosis and silicosis. Both Dr. Harry Hardy and Dr. Mostyn said there is significant risk of lung cancer and heart failure. Mostyn also said I would be more susceptible to pneumonia. The winter of 97-98, I was down 5.5 months with pneumonia. Dr. Mostyn started medical treatment for borreliosis, no treatment for silicosis, including prednisone and steroid, periodic exams with chest x-rays, pulmonary and blood gas studies, at rest and with exercise. Dr. Mostyn said that Loveless noted the condition on 1962 x-rays that they had taken earlier for ear surgery there. As well, she could see the condition on my lateral x-rays before 62. This means a delay of 8 years or more in diagnosing and medical treatment because the lab did not see or inform me of the condition of their x-rays. My attorney said he had to send the sheriff to obtain the lateral x-rays for her. I continued to work for the lab as able with time off for bad days and medical treatment. My attorney said the University of California quietly had borreliosis added to the New Mexico Workman's Comp law and that it contained a statute of limitations. He filed a claim against the University of California on my behalf. My position was that if I became disabled, that I would be compensated in a realistic and appropriate manner for the loss of wages, real and expected, and for full payment of all related medical expenses for the rest of my life. My attorney requested that the AEC, the University of California, and their insurance company waive the statute of limitations in my case, but they refused to do so. After about 5 years, and just days before the claim was scheduled to be heard in court, Royal Globe Insurance Company made an offer of settlement based on the date of discovery, not what it might be at the date of disability, in the amount of $24,000 for lost wages, pain, and suffering. That amounts to about 10% of the actual loss of wages that I experienced, and $25,000 for medical treatment. My attorney advised my late wife and me that if we declined the offer and proceeded with the hearing, the court might rule that the statute of limitations had expired. We would receive no compensation at all. We accepted this offer under duress. March 4th, 77, Dr. Mostyn advised me and the lab that if I continued my duties at the altitude of 7,000 feet of Los Alamos, that I would develop evidence of right side heart damage and the possibility of right side heart failure. She also said that my prognosis was guarded and that I should live below 5,000 feet. In view of Dr. Mostyn's statement, the University of California, Dr. Greer, recommended my medical termination, that I be allowed to use up the 1.5 years sick leave that I had accrued before the final date of medical retirement of May 29, 1979. This was approved by the California Employees Retirement System. Because of the progressive nature of the disease, no rehabilitation would be offered. July 78, my late wife and I moved to Peralta, which is below 5,000 feet. After Dr. Mostyn retired, I was medically followed by Dr. Parks with Presbyterian. He put me on oxygen at night in addition to the other program Dr. Mostyn was using. I'm presently followed by Dr. Richardson, Presbyterian Occupational Medicine, Albuquerque. I have been treated for this disease for 29 years, and I feel that the 25 is about used up. In view of regarded prognosis mentioned before, I feel that the worst is yet to come. My present wife and I have tried to purchase more life insurance, but have been rejected because of the borreliosis. I'm very disturbed by the prospect that my present wife could have to pay for any of my related medical expenses in my later years. In closing, I mentioned before that someone in Washington felt that it was important that I come to work at the project. I came, I had a job to do, and I did it. Someone else did not do their job. I feel that now is the time. I feel that now is the time for someone in Washington to understand the importance of accepting the financial responsibilities for the damage that I and others like me have incurred to our health and quality of life during our service to our nation. Thank you for hearing me, and may God bless you in your decisions.
Thank you, sir. The next speaker is Gene Barrington, followed by, I can't read this very well, Eloy Garcia. And while Mr. Barrington is coming up here, let me say that we're very fortunate that the ombudsman from the State of New Mexico Workers' Compensation Administration, the ombudsman, my understanding, is a worker advocate, has come to this meeting. He's stationed outside with some materials. His name is Abelino Montoya, and told us as a result of this meeting he will set up a regular office hours here in Espanola, or in this area, in order to assist individuals here in applying for state workers' compensation while we're still waiting for a federal program to develop. So if anyone has any questions, you could see him during the break. His name is Abelino Montoya.
I went to Los Alamos from Denver in April 1951. They came up there recruiting machinists. And I was accepted and told to come to Los Alamos. I was assigned first to Shop 13, a tubuloid shop. At the time they were developing H-bomb. And Shop 13 was in the old tech area, which was just south of Ashley's Pond. Or I say just south, down on the edge of the canyon. I always took all the precautions and all the time. I machined tubuloid, oralloy, and other hot materials as was required. And when the H-bomb project was completed, I asked to be transferred. I wanted to do something else besides work that hard material. I was sent back to the main shop, which was still in the old tech area down south of Ashley's Pond. And then was sent to Shop 20 from the main shop to replace someone there. And still in the same shop area, in the old tech area. Graphite shop and Shop 20 were separated by a 10-foot by 10-foot office. And on each side of this office was a door leading into Shop 20 on one side, into the graphite shop on the other. The doors were just regular home-style wooden doors with glass panels in the upper part. And you could look through this glass into Shop 20, in the graphite shop when they were working in there. You couldn't see any of the machinists that were working in there because the dust and the particles from the graphite were so thick. I'm here really, I want to speak, not really, but not all the way. I want to speak for myself too. But I want to speak for my friend Joe Cunningham. He can't speak for himself. Joe died of cancer in 1984. He retired in 1979. And the medical examiners there told his wife and me and my wife at that time that every organ in Joe's body was full of graphite. He didn't complain about it while he was there. I never heard him complain about working graphite, but he worked graphite many years before I got to Los Alamos. He was there early on. I guess one of the first machinists hired there, perhaps. I didn't know that part of his life. I went there in '51. He probably went there in early 40s. And when he died, his wife told us that Joe was the 13th person to die of cancer who had worked in those 4 shops: graphite, shop 20, Oralloy, and where they had machined other materials like that. And there were 21 men that I knew of that worked those shops at that time. I didn't keep track of them after I left, but that's what Lucy said that they had. Now, when I was back, can I hold it in my hand?
Sure. Also, begin to wrap up if you could.
Beg pardon?
Maybe if you could begin to summarize, would be helpful.
Well, when I went across the bridge, when they had the new tech area was completed, we went across the bridge from where I was working and into our new shop 20 in Sigma building. The graphite was on the north end, and shop 20 was on the other end, on the lower level. I began, after working there a while, I began to notice it was a lot harder to climb those stairs to get out of there. And it was because I was just breathing heavy. And I thought age had something to do with it. And so I was watching close to see what might be affecting my breathing. And I noticed that our air ducts, that bringing air into the lower area, around the joints and the seams, you could see the telltale signs of leakage, and it was black, just as black as, say, cold water or coal tar. And I notified the health people several times. Each time I did, they would come and monitor it and report that there was nothing hazardous leaking. Although you could see that something was leaking out of there, or out of the seams. Each time they would report that there was nothing, no cause for alarm. My breathing became worse, and after I retired in '79, about the same time Joe Cunningham retired. And he went to Oklahoma City, where his daughter was, and I went to a little farm over in Arkansas where I went. But I noticed that it was getting worse, so I went to Fayetteville, had an examination at Fayetteville, Arkansas, and they diagnosed it COVID asthma. And on February comparison as that was a heart attack, the pain I had. And I went back to Fayetteville for the
I think we're going to have to thank you. We have a lot of additional speakers, and actually your time is up, and we're grateful for your. Do you have any last comments to make?
Beg pardon?
Do you have any last comments to make?
Yes, I would like to make a comment.
Thanks.
You're talking about different wars and things. I was in the National Guard before World War II came along. I served there for a year and a half, and when war was declared, I served in the Army Engineers. I was over in the European theater for almost 4 years, not the whole time was 4 years. And I wear hearing aids, as you see, and I lost, that is recognized that it was service connected, but they have never given me anything for it, not even buying me hearing aids, because I haven't been drawing compensation since my ears were knocked out. And I didn't think it was a big enough disability to be collecting money for, so I didn't. That was a bad mistake. I was wounded once, and I decided that I didn't want to turn myself into the hospital. I already knew about Veterans Administration hospitals. I didn't want to go there because they told me I was coming home. And the reason why I didn't come home right away, the war was over by this time, is because the bomb was dropped, built in Los Alamos, saved a whole bunch of people from going to Japan. Very grateful. And I worked in Los Alamos for almost 29 years. I regret nothing. I love my work there. I love the time I spent there. Only thing I'd change if I could would leaving. And they treated me very well. I took all the examinations, all of the specimens were gave and everything. Nothing was ever reported wrong. But this a test I had in Arkansas, they cannot understand my problem with my lungs. They said my smoking history would not account for it. Now what I'm here for myself, would be to see if there's something else that I can do and find out what I should do.
Thank you, sir, very much. Angel Garcia. Next. And let me remind you, we have a tremendous number of speakers, so please, kindly, if you can refrain from going over 4 minutes, we'd be very grateful. Oh, and thank you. After Aboy is Harold Archuleta.
We're going to share.
Oh, great. Okay. So after Harold will be Huguette Sirjont.
Hello, how are you? I'm Eloy Garcia. I'm from Chamita, about 6 miles north of Espanola. I still live there. I worked at Los Alamos from 1947 till 1994. My job title was as a mechanic. I've been diagnosed with asbestos in my lungs. And before that, I went through surgery and skin cancer on my ears. Back on my ears, that was in 1973. And the way I got that asbestos, I think by doing brakes, clashes, that's asbestos. And we had a very poor ventilation in our building. We used to use a blowgun to blow the dust. The janitor used to come and sweep that, so it was very dusty. So far, I have to go to the area physical every year to get an x-ray through my medical doctor. And and that's about it. And here's another gentleman that worked on the same union as an operator engineer. As far as I know, he has leukemia. So thank you very much.
How do you do? My name is Jonathan Garcia, and I worked at TA 54, which is called the Hot Dump in Los Alamos, for 16 years, off and on. I buried everything from beryllium, Pu-239, 238, everything that comes out of Los Alamos. And I was diagnosed with leukemia. I had a bone marrow transplant in Denver, Colorado by Dr. Robert Rifkin, and I'm a survivor so far. I've had numerous injuries I've been suffering from injuries that I had in Los Alamos while performing my duties. I had a total hip replacement done a couple of years back. I've got degenerate arthritis in most of my body, and I was terminated by Los Alamos when they found out that I had leukemia, and left without anything. The doctors in Colorado helped me in different ways. I was refused Social Security at the time. I was finally given a special meeting, and they gave me my Social Security so they could help me with my bills. And then when I got out, I got a host virus disease because my body started rejecting my brother's bone marrow. And again, no help. Los Alamos offered me a settlement of $50,000, and even the judge called me over the phone because I couldn't attend the settlement because I was real sick. I went from 180 pounds down to 115 and nearly died twice. And I'm still here, but I'm glad you guys are doing something for us finally.
Mr. Archuleta?
Hi, I'm Harold Archuleta. I'm retired from Los Alamos National Lab, where I worked for 35 years. And my work with plutonium, casting out a lot of plutonium parts, a lot of shells, and in the process, I got an intake where I have plutonium in my lungs now, americium 241, Pu-239 in my body, and I don't know if it's affected my chest. I've gotten discomfort in my chest over the years, weakness, and they don't know what's going on. But I'm dealing with it now. And the first intake I got was going to do a job to cast out some plutonium parts, and I went to get some PU buttons out of a freezer. And the freezer, I didn't realize he had given out over the weekend because we kept our plutonium in the freezer. So they wouldn't oxidize. So when I opened the lid and opened the can where the buttons were, and they were stainless steel cans, I know they were oxidized. And I closed it and got out of there, called the monitor, they gave me a no swipe, and they were real high. That's how I got the first intake. Another incident, casting out some plutonium rods, and fill out the mold, and we know it's plutonium according to molds. And then the plutonium run over the runner, and there was a sleeve on the bottom. When I picked it up, I poked my finger with plutonium. And good thing the monitor was around, and I called him over, and he came over and pulled my hand out of the glove port, and checked it wasn't hot. But then we went to the wound counter, and he was hot. So they took me over to occupational medicine, and they told me that they could leave it like that without body burden, or they could cut it out. I chose to cut it out, and they finally cleaned it out below background. And there were other incidents that happened. These are at the old DP West where I started. And and over at the TA-55, the platoon facility, we had some incidents there also. And all this time, I don't know if it's affected my chest, because I feel a weakness there every so often. And I have a lot of information, and it was more time, but so far, maybe another time I can talk some more.
Yeah, I was just going to say, for Harold's advantage and anyone else, if any of you who testify, or even any of you who do not testify, have additional information that you want to make part of this record, you should give that to us, and we will be sure that it is part of the official record so that it is there to be reviewed when we get to writing legislation, so that people don't need to feel if they didn't get something said that they're cut off from getting it considered.
Thank you for having that. And as I said before, we also have a toll-free number. There's a flyer outside with a number and the times to call us to provide additional information as well. Hugh Getz, Sir Jones?
Testing.
Let's give her a moment to make it up here. And the next one will be Robert Key, will be next after Hugh Getz.
My name is Yugetz Yagong. I am a widow and a fired employee of Los Alamos National Laboratory. I speak in behalf of those, like myself, who have suffered both great uncompensated losses through occupational illness or death of spouse and retaliatory abuse from LANL. I also speak in memory of 5 nuclear experimental workers at the laboratory at risk for occupational radiation-induced cancers. These men were between the ages of 48 and 53. These men worked at the Los Alamos National Physics Facility. These men were diagnosed with cancer within a few months of one another at the same facility. And I got news that there were 2 other technicians that were all involved in this. The names of the individuals that I have are Jules Sounier, physicist, died of leukemia on October 7, 1990. Navi Tanaka, physicist, died of adenocarcinoma of the colon on February 23, 1991. Mohammed Magdi Ghazali, physicist, my late husband, died of adenocarcinoma in the liver on May 15, 1991. Helmut Baer, physicist, died of lung cancer on October 11, 1991. Glenn Camp, technician, died of stomach cancer approximately 1993. I am here to demand legislation that will force investigation of toxic exposure incident resulting in death or illness of workers and to determine the cause of death under suspicious circumstances. I do this because my husband's dosimeter badge did not indicate high exposure to radiation, and no one, including the DOE, could be motivated to investigate further. I didn't know that the dosimeter didn't measure internally deposited radionuclides, whether radioactive or not. I also do this because LANL was a major violation of the Clean Act for 3 years. Evidence can be provided to demonstrate this violation was willful. The laboratory made a conscious decision to keep operations at the Los Alamos National Physics Facility despite the act and didn't report it. Diffuse emissions from the linear accelerator were set in a vacuum and not being released up through the smokestacks. An accident occurred in 1989, which went unreported, and the precast shielding surrounding the target was inadequate and harmful to workers through contamination of water supply and the cooling systems. I demand improved legislation to the beryllium bill, which currently excludes those workers from compensation who have been exposed to beryllium and who were not tested. My husband worked with radioactive beryllium. I didn't know that it could possibly kill him. As indicated on the DOE website, the liver is a target organ for beryllium. The treatment provider said one should not rule out the possibility of abnormal toxicity, yet no testing was performed. I demand new and improved legislation that will forbid a national laboratory to retaliate against or abuse any worker or surviving family who seeks relief or who uncovers an accident or unsafe condition. I do this because when I voiced concerns about safety and requested a DOE investigation, laboratory workers branded me as an ignorant troublemaker and slanderer. I experienced fear and reprisal from top management down to my immediate supervisors and didn't have a clue that the patterns were consistent with whistleblower. Contrary to an arrangement made by the director, my personnel record contains damaging, misleading information that prevents me from being hired by most New Mexico employers. I demand legislation that will increase the lump sum settlement and medical benefits for survivors. After I lost both my husband and my job, I then lost my house and all my savings as well. $100,000 will not even begin to help me offset the financial expenses I incurred, nor provide me with the restitution from shattering dreams my husband and I planned of raising a family. Before the chemotherapy, we had sperm frozen with hopes of having children. When I lost my job, single parenthood was an unrealistic option, even through adoption. I felt robbed. I demand new legislation redefine spouse, not by marriage alone and not by the duration of marriage. I do this because my husband became ill and diagnosed with cancer 3 months after we were married on May 30th of 1990. He died before 1 year on May 15th, 1991. Under present guidelines, I am barred from relief. Finally, I demand radiation-induced cancer legislation that will lift burden of proof from us as in the Strickland bill. DOE has been negligent for decades, and we have suffered so much. We do not deserve to be punished due to these restrictions, latency periods, inaccurate or no records, or to have the National Economic Council cut corners in the budget. DOE spends approximately $11 billion on cleanup. I don't think $500 million is asking a lot for workers who are deserving. The draft report does not report causation. Why should we be obligated to prove causation? Thank you.
Our next speaker is Robert Key, followed by Lawrence Longacre. I have a difficult request. The state fire department is here. The fire department is here. They've asked us to clear the aisles where we've reached the point of crowding here where we have a safety violation. So if I can ask if some people who are just here listening, who just have some incidental interest, if they don't mind listening outside, so some of the people who are in the aisles who plan to testify for retired workers consent. And otherwise, I think we have to clear the aisles promptly.
Gotta clear the aisles. not very much of a speaker. I'm just an old engineer who went to work at Los Alamos in 1951, working in a petroleum facility and also testing at Anahuac, Bikini, and some of the places that we tested. My main reason here is that I was in a special study with Oak Ridge and other people who have been in this business way back. And I don't know what happened to that study. I sent information back. It was approved by Eckert. And I have papers that I can give you people.
Yeah, if you could share them with us, we'd be grateful.
You can have whatever I've got. One of the things that's bothered me is I went through the explosion in Jackass Flats back in the 60s and lost both my eardrums. Smeller, I don't have any smeller. And the lab's been good enough to buy me a hearing aid, and that's all I ever got out of that. And that kind of bothers me. Another thing that happened when I went through the hydrogen explosion in Jackass Flats, the explosion was so great that I had partial plates and I had to have all new plates made. And so what has happened, and why I'm here today, is that I have also developed Parkinson's. And in talking to people and researching going on in Parkinson, it can be caused by an accident, explosion, or something like that. And I'm here to see whether other people, nobody tells other people what's going on. How many other people in the lab have developed Parkinson's from an explosion? The explosion was great enough to break up my partials in a million cracks. What did it do to my brain when that happened? That's one of the things I want to find out.
And if you can share those papers with my staff, we'd be very grateful. Yes, Senator Bingaman points out the court reporter's transcript will be on our website, the website of my office, so this will all be available, as well as the transcripts of most of the previous meetings are already on that website, so you could see the testimony of workers at Oak Ridge, at Paducah, at Portsmouth, at Rocky Flats, at Hanford, and on test site as well. Lawrence Longacre is next, followed by Marcella Nogar.
Honored guests and ladies and gentlemen, buenos dias. My name is Lawrence Longacre and I'm from Santa Fe. I worked at the lab up there for 38 years. My father worked up there for about 30. When I see these gentlemen that came up here dragging their little tanks and their hoses and the lady on crutches, I was sitting back there thinking, I'd give anything to see my dad walk through that door. But he died from emphysema 2 years ago. And I firmly believe that it was exacerbated through his work at the lab, where his job, he was a mechanic, starting all the way back in the 50s, when the Cold War was intense and at all costs, including safety and health, the lab was going full throttle and they were testing in the Pacific and in Nevada. And I myself have fears for myself and that I may, due to the same exposure that he had, be coming down in another 10 years with the same symptoms. But before I go into that, my main point is that for all these years, the lab, the scientists at the lab have held two separate entities hostage. One is the American people and the Congress. Because of their position that their work is so vital that if it were not for them, we'd all be speaking Russian or North Korean or Tunisian or whatever. Money is thrown at them, and they do as they please. There's no accountability. In all of our jobs, every single one of us here are accountable to what we do, and if we don't do a good job, we're down the road. The other group that they have been holding hostage are the workers. For many years, there's been no accountability at the lab for anything. They have poisoned the air, the ground, the water. They have violated our rights. The lady, I can only echo what the lady said. When I brought up health concerns about asbestos, chemicals, and on, I was labeled a troublemaker. And had it not been for Congressman Richardson, who many people in this audience, were on a first-name basis, because when Bill first came to New Mexico, we backed him and he never forgot us. Had it not been for Bill, I'd have been going down the road a long time ago. Our concern, I worked in the steam plants and the power plants where there's a lot of asbestos. These things were built in the 50s when they didn't know anything about asbestos. I complained, and one time they sent a safety engineer with a monitor. I deliberately took some asbestos and I threw it into the monitor just to check out their honesty. And what happened? The report came back that there was no asbestos in the air. And so all of our people in the plants daily face breathing asbestos, hydrochloric acid, chemicals that are used in water treatment. And if you complain, the atmosphere changed a little bit in the last couple of years after Johnson Controls went in there. But the lab always held Johnson Controls to higher standards or levels than they themselves are willing to accept. And I don't want to belabor the point, but if nothing else comes out of this hearing, maybe we'll get some compensation, maybe we won't. But I would urge the Congress to really make them accountable for everything. Equipment gets stolen, it gets lost, all kinds of things happen at the lab, and there's no accountability. When I complain about the water being poisoned and going down to where Santa Fe gets their water from Buckman, they said, well, move. And that was their attitude. Thank you.
Marcella Nogar, followed by Gene Westerhold. Okay, yeah, Marcella has chosen not to testify. Gene Westerhold